Citizens in fear of the street, the gun, the gang. Only one thing fighting for order in the chaos. The men and women of the Hall of Justice. Juries. Executioners. Judges.
Hello and welcome to Comic Book Movie Oblivion, the podcast about feature films based on comic books and comic strips that people have stopped talking about. We are your hosts, Jordan and Kumar. That's me.
That's me, creep.
And this week we're talking about Dredd from 2012. Here's how we're going to do the podcast from now on.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you the release dates. Comic came out around 1981.
Okay.
Movie came out in 2012. There are some surprises. I wouldn't say plot twists. There are surprises.
In the comic. Or the film.
In the comic.
Right.
And we're going to reveal them.
Yes.
There. That's your warning.
Oh, okay.
That's
so no more pause the podcast. It's now a spoiler warning.
Spoiler warning, I'm going to tell you when they came out.
Yep. And whether or not it has plot twists.
Yes.
And then that's it.
Plot twists or surprises.
Good. It's going great.
Okay. That's the new Pause the Podcast.
Love it.
Okay. So for this week's Dredd prep episode, I chose Blockmania
Yep.
Apocalypse War. This is a storyline in two halves, or a third and two-thirds, that came out around 1981, as I mentioned. This one is all John Wagner and drawn by Ezquerra, unlike some of the other storylines. Actually, Blockmania has a bunch of different artists on it. But the Apocalypse War storyline is only Ezquerra, who had come back to 2080 to do it. Now, I don't know how to characterize this or how shocked I was the first time I read these comics. You read Blockmania and you think it's going to be a Judge Dredd adventure. Everything's fine and dandy, and it kind of is, but then it evolves into the second storyline, Apocalypse War. So,
the first act, Blockmania, it's just, it's an internal kind of Mega City 1 story, as is typical for Dredd, as you pointed out. And then once Act 2 begins, it's a world war.
Yes, absolutely. Massive world war. But there are some... So, Blockmania starts out, as we mentioned last week, there are these giant blocks, apartment towers, which house about 60 to 70,000 people each.
Yes.
Of these giant blocks. They have ridiculous names like Ricardo Montalban Towers. I think I noted down a bunch of them. I can't remember all of them. We might come across them. Enid Blyton Block is a big one here. Joan Collins, Martin Sheen, David Niven, Charlton Heston.
Yep.
Arnold Stang was a funny one because he's a very kind of forgotten actor, but he was one of the voices in Pogo. And he's gonna come back.
Well spotted.
So I didn't need to write that one down. Even the overpasses in Mega City 1 are like Rita Hayworth Overzoom is the name of one of the overpasses.
Yeah.
Stuff like this. So it's all very satirical and funny. And we're told at the outset that block wars happen from time to time. They just break out.
Yes.
Much as they did last week. They're just a random block war that's just happening with two blocks that go to war for whatever reason. In this case, an ice cream cone falls on a woman's head from a rival block, and the block meeting that night.
Yeah. So like a town hall meeting.
She's like, let's declare war on those guys because they dropped an ice cream cone on my head.
Well, what happens? It's interesting. What happens specifically is there's just a kind of pressure in the air, tension. Yes. And these meetings are usually completely unattended because of the apathy of Mega City 1 citizens. But this week, all 6,000 seats in the meeting room are full.
Yeah.
And everybody just wants to talk about, I think the chair starts to talk about some random issue.
Yes.
And then some guy stands up and says, let's just get to the point. Block war!
Yeah.
They haven't even decided who they want to fight with.
That's right, yes.
And I thought, that's funny.
Yes.
But it actually turns out to be a plot point.
That's right. It turns into a plot point, but also, at this point, you're like, this is all really weird, as typical of Judge Dredd, weird, funny stuff, satirical with the names of these buildings and the ridiculousness of just going to war against another apartment tower.
Yep.
But it starts escalating, and then these alliances start forming between blocks, and suddenly we got a 6-block war, and Dredd is like, this is bigger than usual, and he says, take down the leaders, and the rest will run away. That's what usually happens during a block war. Doesn't happen this time.
Oh, and what's more, even some judges
Yes, they're picking sides.
are picking sides.
Yes.
Yeah. Leaving their post and going back to their block tower to fight with their block.
Yes. Yes.
And that's very concerning for the judges.
Exactly. And so they figure out there's some sort of plot. They figure that they finally work out that people are being poisoned through the water supply.
It takes a while.
There's a lot of action escalation. Again, these are 6-page chapters. They're always ending on cliffhangers, and then
it's always ramping up. It's getting more and more violent, and the judges have to take more and more extreme measures. They're running out of the riot foam, which they spray on people, which it encases them in kind of foam.
Yeah.
It hardens and they're stuck. And they're still firing their guns inside the foam because they're so mad. And then they start using stum gas, STUMM, all caps, which is banned in public because it causes 1 in 10 people exposed to it, I think, die.
Right. Right.
So they're not allowed to use it in a large area, to minimise casualties, but Dredd's just like, well, we got it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We're going to do it. Yes. And they start doing it. Then they start running out of stum gas.
Yeah.
And they can't figure out what's going on. They can't find any trace they've got corpses. They can't find any trace in the corpses as to what is causing this. But they're pretty sure it's an outside influence because people are going rabidly nuts.
Yes.
Then they catch someone in a water treatment facility.
Well, first they have this informer. So somebody calls them and says that this was started by a person, but that informer ends up dead. They have another guy named Max Normal, who is one of... I love that name, Max Normal. This is the weirdest guy. He's Judge Dredd's regular informant that he comes to, and they figure out the water supply. Now, here's where things... Not only do you find out there's a bigger plot going on, but this is a lot more serious than just funny building names, because Judge Giant, who is a character that was with us all through the Cursed Earth storyline, is killed off. And he's just dead. Yeah. That's it. That character's dead. There's no coming back for that guy.
Yeah.
I think he was killed by the Saboteur, as I recall. He was down there in the tunnels chasing him. Yeah. And Dredd finds him.
The Saboteur is real badass.
And then you're like, oh, okay,
He's called Orlok.
Yes, that's right. The Saboteur's called Orlok. That's right.
And he's an assassin, they describe him as.
Yes.
Anyway, he sabotages the weather machines. They've got weather satellites. Yeah. He gets up to one somehow.
Yeah, everything's amping up, right? So,
and it's in the rain.
Yes, that's right.
And it's spreading everywhere. I think Dredd gets in, but he says it's too late, Dredd. And Dredd's like, "What do you mean? It's over." He goes, "No, it's not over because this was just the first blow.
Right.
Any minute now, the second blow will fall, and Mega City 1 is doomed."
Yeah.
That's when it's revealed it's a Sov plot.
Yes. So East Meg 1, the Soviets are softening up Mega City 1. They want to
destroy it.
First they want to hit it with nukes, then they want to enslave the population. This is important. They mentioned this several times.
Yes, you're right.
They want to enslave the population, and they also tell Texas and Mega City 2 to stay out of it.
Yes. Texas City and Mega City
And they're like, okay, we'll stay out of it.
Yep.
We don't want any trouble.
Yep.
Obviously, the Sovs are going to turn on them as soon as they've taken over Mega City 1. But these idiots are like, yeah, okay, we'll comply.
Yep.
Sounds a lot like things that have been happening in the last couple of years.
Yeah, well, it's just, the more things change. But, they just launched nukes
this is it. So the Soviets launched nukes at Mega City 1. And I've been indoctrinated by American comic books for far too long, because I'm like, well, Judge Dredd is going to stop these nuclear missiles. No, he does not.
Nope. They stopped some of them, but
a measly few.
But they still kill millions
of people are killed by these nuclear warheads that hit Mega City 1. And I'm like, holy shit. Also, this is initially, printed, as I mentioned last week, on very cheap newsprint, completely disposable. But the most massive things are happening in these comics, and they are not holding back.
No, it's just crazy.
Anyway,
there's all these layers of defense that protect at Mega City 1. They've got satellites, like Star Wars style satellites. They've got planes flying around. They've got submarines in the ocean all around Mega City 1, and they're all stopping missiles frantically, and even the Mega Towers themselves have guns on the roof that can stop as a weapon of last resort to stop a missile. But those guns are all been turned on the other blocks because of the block mania. So missiles are getting through, they're nuking Mega City 1. Mega City 1, big bits of it are getting smashed up and millions of people are dying. Dredd personally, I think, orders the counterattack because of mutually assured destruction, or maybe it's Judge Griffith, who's a goodie in this one.
Griffin.
Judge Griffin.
He was the Jürgen Prochnow character,
yes. Yeah. They counter-strike.
Yes.
So they're going to... I'm reading this, I'm thinking, what the...
Yes. This is what I'm thinking. What the fuck? Every page of this comic, I cannot believe what I'm reading.
It just keeps around. Yep, but the Sovs have an impenetrable shield.
Yeah, they have a dimensional portal shield, which Mega City 1 did not know about.
No.
So all of the missiles go through into another dimension, and we see it's some sort of like fantasy land.
It's a paradise that's never known war.
Yes.
And they're wandering around in like burlap and they're really happy, and then they just get nuked. Their whole planet gets nuked.
Yes.
And
we get a page of like the planet like breaking apart.
They've not known war for 1,000 years, and then they just see the Mega City 1 missiles are like big and black, and they've got a judge badge on the front.
Yes.
Oh, incidentally, East Meg 1, the Sov City, it's also run by judges.
Yes, their own version of judges. Yeah, absolutely. And they have a triumvirate that's at the head. Bulgarin.
Yes.
Was that the name of the guy that were Heart of a Dog? Yuri Bulgarin, wasn't that his name?
I don't know.
Anyway, I can't remember the names of the other two.
He looks like Stalin.
And then there's another guy. Yes, he looks like Stalin. Then there's the field marshal or whatever his name, Mad Dog.
Kazal, was it?
Kazan.
Kazan. Mad Dog Kazan.
He's the guy that's out in the field, like, commanding the troops. The oligarchy goes down to a bunker.
Yeah.
To hide. As soon as the war starts, they're like, okay, let's go down and wait for the next phase of the plan to go through. That's when the East or the Mega City 1 nukes come over.
There's a funny moment where one of the triumvirs asks the Stalin, Bulgarin, if even one of those missiles gets through, it could kill, millions of people. Should we warn the populace?
Oh yeah.
And Stalin says, why would we do that?
Yes. Yes.
And then we've got... Then back in Mega City 1, Dredd is like right at the centre coordinating the response. The judges are also the army. There's no regular army, so the judges are...
That's right.
There's no standing army in Mega City 1. The judges do everything.
Yeah.
They're also coordinating the response, and they know that more missiles and invasions are coming in, and someone says to Dredd, well, we should warn the citizens, let them know it's coming. And Dredd says, why tell the citizens? Do you really think they'd be interested?
Well, there's two... Okay, so there's the line from Bulgarin. So
I'm so glad you wrote it down. Okay.
One of the advisors says 12% of the population will be killed in the first hour. Shall we inform the people? And Bulgarin, Joseph Bulgarin is his name, Supreme Judge Joseph Bulgarin says, the people, what have they got to do with it?
That's it, yes.
That's his line. But on Dredd's side, the people are still suffering from block mania. So he's like, almost like they're not going to care or understand anyway. So he has a little bit of an excuse.
It is a little gentler with Dredd, but it's still an ironic echo.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It could be block mania, or he could just be talking about the general disaffection of the Mega City.
That is true, because we've seen that in other comics, in other Dredd comics, yeah. So by the way, the Mega City 1 nukes are called TADs, Total Annihilation Devices. Okay, so now Mega City 1 has been hit by all these nukes. It's become a wasteland within the city. It's not just a cursed Earth. And by the way,
the Sovs invade under...
They invade. There's a land invasion. They are driving these tanks called T-1000s. They're rad sweeper tanks, they're called, which drive over corpses look very much like Terminator, where there are tanks and T-1000s walking across the wasteland crushing skulls.
When this came out in 1981?
Yeah.
When did Terminator come out?
84.
Someone don't tell Harlan Ellison.
Yeah. We'll have to add 2 credits to Terminator now. Okay, so now we've got this radioactive wasteland. I'm turning pages like I can't believe any of this is happening.
Yeah, millions of people are dead. The city's invaded. The judges have to get out these super lasers that blow up half the time.
Yes, they have been tested, yes.
They can take out tanks with them, but half the time they blow up and they're killing judges. Then they destroy the overpasses.
Yeah,
to hold the advance.
Yes.
So they're just wrecking the city.
Yes, absolutely. There's an amazing drawing. I think it was this chapter is maybe drawn by Mike McMahon, where and over one of these there's a giant like science fictional tower which the overpasses are connected to, and they've blasted the tower but it hasn't collapsed completely. So it's on this tower's on its side and the overpasses are like propped up by. He's had to draw this.
Yeah.
And he's had to draw all the block war and all this stuff. He's had to draw all this crazy stuff, including these overpasses. I just,
a lot of work.
This is another thing that also I couldn't believe about it. But I just want to. Okay, so here's the first. Okay, we've had several shocks to my system at this stage. Here comes the first really mega shock. The judges put on radiation suits. They go out into where the radiation is. They meet a bunch of Mega City 1 citizens that are surviving out there, and Judge Dredd is like, "This is a radiation zone.
Yeah,
you're gonna die." And
the citizens say,
students are like,
"Well, there's nothing worse than a death by radiation poisoning. Please kill us."
No, they say, "Don't leave us like this." Dredd says, and then we get a panel of 4 judges and radiation suits lined up like a firing squad, and Dredd saying, "Request granted," and they open fire. They didn't say.
They didn't ask for a mercy killing. I thought it was implied they did.
Oh, it was implied, but they didn't say please kill us. The shocking thing to me is there's no panel in between. There's no moment where the judges are like, "Geez, should we do this?" There's no thought balloon of like, "I hate that I have to do this.
Nope.
I don't want to do this, but I have to do it."
It's just a firing
There's nothing.
squad.
There's nothing. Don't leave us like this. Request granted. Open fire.
Yeah.
Death. They don't even, at this point, those civilians, they didn't even know they were poisoned until Judge Dredd told them.
Well, it gets even better.
Oh yeah, it gets 100 times better, but I was falling out of my chair at this point of the story.
They were collaborators. So the Sovs are dropping posters that have a hypnosis device in them.
Yeah.
So people have been cured of the block mania because the Sovs have released the antidote because they want a pacified population, not one that's fighting them.
Yes.
Because the block mania people are fighting the Sovs just as they're fighting everybody because they've gone crazy. So they released the antidote. The city is now free of block mania, with one exception, Dredd's landlady.
That's Landlady Maria, the Mario type.
Yeah, and her robot that his robot, Walter the robot, who has like a lisp,
a speech impediment. He can't pronounce R's or all
like the Jeffrey Dahmer guy. I'm a decker waiter.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so people are getting these posters and they hypnotize them into thinking that the Sovs are the good guys. Later on, after I think they've stopped the advance by destroying the overpass, some citizens come up to Dredd and is like, "We're sorry, Dredd, we didn't know." And Dredd goes, "The punishment for collaboration is death." And then he kills them.
He kills them, they drop them into a pit, an open grave, and then throw leaflets on them that say collaborators or traitors. Traitors on them.
They were hypnotized.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Kazan has assassinated the judges back in the bunker.
That's right. He feels he was left out of the triumvirate or whatever.
He just wants to rule. He wants to rule the world.
Yes.
Because he now controls East Meg 1 and he's about to control Mega City 1. Dredd decides to now go on the offensive. They have an elaborate plan to...
before they go on the offensive, I just want to point out there's another scene that really hit... I mean, it's page after page in this comic. Yeah, it's unbelievable. Unbelievable. There's a scene where we have 27 million refugees leaving the city. Yeah. They're like, we're going out into the cursed earth. Screw this. They can't even stay in Mega City 1. They go out, but then this hurricane comes up. I don't remember what caused the hurricane. It was like nuclear hurricane, but it whips the people up and deposits them back inside the city wall. And then the judges are watching this on a screen saying, "Worst storm I've ever seen. It's raining citizens out there."
There's so much craziness. Dredd has to assassinate Griffin at one point because Griffin's been brainwashed by the Sovs.
Oh my god, yes, that's right, yeah.
Dredd invades the TV studio where they're holding him and screening it. He confronts the judge and says, "What's the penalty for treason?" And Judge Griffin kind of snaps out of it for a second. He goes, "Oh my god, I'm a traitor. You have to stop me, Dredd." Dredd shoots him, and then himself. Dredd shoots himself.
That's right.
Because he can't escape from this heavily guarded television station.
Yeah.
Then it turns out that he tampered with the bullet so that there was only enough gunpowder to
just get near his heart but not go into it. To go through the bullet, like go through the badge and his, yeah.
And he put in a little too much, so the bullet's like resting on his heart, kind of like Tony Stark style. And he's staggering around with a bullet in his heart.
Yeah. By the way, that TV show that Chief Judge Griffin was on, he had psychosurgery.
Yeah.
Was called Curfew Talk, which is a hilarious name for a talk show, and it was hosted by Mikhail Parkinov.
I didn't spot that.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, Dredd gets fixed up, the bullet removed, and that's when they decide that they've got to take the fight to Mega City 1. So they have an elaborate plan where basically they break into the bunker.
Yeah, okay, so first he brings a small team with him of like 8 people. One of them is Judge Anderson from Psi Division.
Yes.
Which we didn't mention last week, but there is a division of psychics.
Yeah.
And Judge Anderson is one of them.
Yes. An important one. She's the one that stops Judge Death.
Yes.
Eventually, by imprisoning his psyche and then willingly encasing herself in boing.
Yes. She's key in this mission because she extracts information from the criminals.
Yes.
Even
from
this was
the Sovs. Yeah.
From the Sovs. Yeah. This was a little bit more subtle, but she also never has any ethical questioning of, should I go into this guy's head and extract this information?
No.
Dredd's like, we need these codes. She just walks up and just extracts the codes.
In this, well, this is war. And boy, is it war.
They're on a constant war footing. Every decision, like shooting those civilians, shooting the collaborators, all this stuff, there's never any...
In this instance, they're literally at war in this case.
Yes,
I mean, arguably the judges are always at war with their own populace. Yes. But in this case, they are literally at war with the Eastern Bloc, with East Meg 1. So, and now, and boy, are they at war, because now Judge Dredd kills 500 million people.
Yeah, we'll get to that a little bit. Let's not skip too far ahead, because that is the most shocking moment of any comic ever written, maybe. Okay, so they go over there. I just want to mention one thing, which is Ezquerra's art at this stage. Because there's a panel here where they shoot a missile, the judges shoot a missile, which goes down underground into a bunker, drills into a wall, and lodges in the wall of the swimming pool.
Yeah.
If I was an artist and I got a script that said this, I'd be like, I'm not going to draw this. What is this? He draws every damn thing, every single thing. He just draws whatever craziness Wagner throws in him.
Kind of deep, swimming pool deep underground. There's a great big hammer and sickle on the wall. There's people, it's called, like Recreation Center A1 or something.
These guys are in a swimming pool down there. The world's like above ground. 12% of the population of East Meg 1 has been destroyed, and they're just like having to swim.
Yeah,
it's great. It's pretty wild. Yes. Okay. So
they break into the bunker.
And
at this point, Dredd decides to turn East Meg 1's own nuclear missiles against itself.
All of them.
And it will wipe out East Meg 1 entirely, because they have no defense against their own missiles.
And as you said, they mentioned this number multiple times, 500 million people, 500 million people. And
someone does challenge him on this.
The Russian judge.
Right. Is it only the Russian judge?
I think it's only one of the Russian judges. He's like, you can't do that. Those are 500 million. And these are civilians. They're not the people that made the decisions.
No.
Are pulling the triggers. These are just people living.
Yep. And Dredd
Dredd's like, request denied, and pushes buttons. It's the most chilling panel.
It's ridiculous. It's absurd. Judge Dredd is now the greatest mass murderer.
Absolutely.
In all media.
Yes, in all media. Absolutely. I want to say, too, that any writer you can just type the words 50 million, 500 million, 5 billion. It doesn't mean anything. Somehow, we have ramped up to such a degree that you buy this number. At this stage of the comic,
it's been a believable escalation.
It is a believable number. Yeah. 500 million, you believe it. When he presses it, it's not just like, well, any asshole can type the words 500 million and it means 500.
It's crazy.
Yeah. It really is functioning in some kind of amazing way that you totally buy it. It adds up. And it is such a... Yeah,
that's pretty much it. That's
and then there's more chapters.
There is more.
But again, we don't get any consideration.
Yeah.
There's no reflection.
Yeah.
None of the other judges are like, I can't believe Dredd did that.
No.
Dredd's not like, I wish I didn't have to do this, but I'm going to do it. We don't get any thought balloons. We don't get any narrative caption boxes. We don't get anything. We get Dredd killing 500 million people, civilians. But also, why did he do it? He did it to demoralize the East Meg troops that were on the ground in Mega City 1.
That's it. That was it.
There's no consideration, was this the only way? Was this the only solution? Was there a different way we could have demoralized those troops?
To beat Kazan and the ground troops in...
Yeah.
Yep.
And then it's...
Well, they had already tried to wipe out East Meg 1 with their initial barrage of TADs, but by this point you've forgotten about that.
That's true.
And all you think about is that, oh my god, Dredd has an option to kill 500 million people. He doesn't have to do it. He's cut off the kind of like... No, he just does it.
Yes.
It's so that they won't have a base to return to and they'll lose their morale.
Yes, that's right. And then they'll surrender. And that's
basically what happens.
Unconditional surrender.
Basically, the Kazan never surrenders. Judge Dredd has to personally personally judge Kazan, which he does, and kills him. And then they dump the survivors of the East Meg 1 army back in the shattered ruins.
That's right, because they don't have enough isocubes to contain the POWs in Mega City 1. So they take them back to their deaths, to their radiation deaths.
Yep.
And there's a panel of these men, the POWs, standing at the edge of like a crevice, like a crater. Like, this is our lives now. Yeah. Absolute nothing. And
that's pretty much, and then they go back to Mega City 1, and Mega City 1 is mostly in ruins. Like, most of the population has been killed. It's just a broken wasteland.
Yeah.
And that's where the comic basically ends.
But the thing about Judge Dredd comics is then we'll have lots of comics about the rebuilding of Mega City 1. That will go on for a very long time. And also, I do feel like the Dredd that said request denied, push the button, is the Dredd that we see in like the Democracy story arc. Like, that's that.
Oh yeah.
This is the character that we've established at this point.
Yeah. He's just a monster.
Yeah.
It's so over the top.
Yeah.
I find the Democracy one a bit more depressing.
Oh, of course it is. It's grim. It's so grim.
This one, you say it's believable, and there's a believable kind of ramping up.
That's right.
But also, I mean, this one I feel is deeply kind of ironic.
Yes.
As well.
Yes.
This is very satirical, satirizing great power foibles and global conflicts and that kind of thing. So this one, I'm able to enjoy it a little bit more than
One,
which I feel is played much more straight.
Yes, in terms of being an entertainment.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's not like, I mean, I love Democracy. I love John Wagner's writing, but it is depressing as all hell. This was more like shocking.
Yeah.
And
with 2 Ks.
Yeah. And it's hard to imagine what any kid reading 2000 AD would have.
It's just ludicrous.
Thought about.
It's so over the top. This is also kind of very Judge Dredd too. I mean,
absolutely.
Judge Dredd is always, I think, even flamboyant in its its portrayal of like the massive city, the crazy. Sometimes it feels like the imagination of like a 10-year-old kid.
Yeah.
And then the submarines attack.
Yes.
And then the satellites attack.
Yeah.
And then the ships patrolling the atmosphere attack.
Yeah.
Then the giant robots come out with claws and they're electrocuting all the population.
Yeah, all in 6-page chunks.
It's amazing. It's wild. A wild read. A wild ride and a wild read.
Yeah. But I did choose this one because Blockmania was at least kind of contained to blocks.
Someone asked Alex Garland, the writer of Dredd 2012, is there anything of Blockmania in your film? And he said, yeah. That was I was inspired to make the Mega Towers, which appear in the film, from the Blockmania story, where you have these self-contained...
Right.
Places that are completely self-sufficient, their own little worlds. So that was astute of you, Kumar, because that occurred to other people too, and they'd actually asked the writer about that.
But again, I hadn't seen the movie. I only knew that it was kind of contained in one tower. For reasons which we might get to as we will start discussing this.
I was surprised to hear that you hadn't seen it, and this week was the first time.
Okay, well, we might as well jump into it. The reason I hadn't seen it was... I'm not sure exactly, but I do remember the reviews were a little bit middle of the road, maybe, at the time. But the main thing was that people kept saying The Raid Redemption, which is a movie...
I remember that when it came out.
Indonesian
movie.
That had come out... months before. Now, obviously, these two films were in production at the same time, and it was just Dredd's bad luck.
Yeah. And The Raid's good luck to come out first.
But also, I mean, having seen both, The Raid it's a martial arts movie.
Yep.
So it's about the athleticism of these...
Well, we will talk about this.
Yeah.
But we'll talk a bit more about
anyway,
comparing the Raid.
all that stuff was kind of like, I don't know if I need to see this Judge Dredd movie. It dropped off of my radar.
It also wasn't... I'm not surprised it dropped off your radar, because it also wasn't marketed very aggressively or prominently.
Right.
I mean, it did well in Australia.
Okay.
Which, interestingly...
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't see it at the cinemas. I saw it later on.
Okay.
On home media. But it made $2 million in Australia.
Well, the bigger question is how to do in the UK.
It didn't do great.
Huh.
Yeah. It didn't do very well, partly because because apparently the distributor was very reluctant to release 2D prints.
Oh, weird.
So it was only showing in 3D.
Okay.
So if you wanted to see the film, you had to go and see it in a cinema that could support 3D footage.
Oh, weird. Okay.
And a regular cinema where you only have 2D footage, apparently it was this was a scandal at the time, actually, because people in the UK wanted to see this movie because they love Judge Dredd.
Yes, but I have a lot of questions about this, too, because this movie is a hard R.
Oh, yeah.
In the US, it would be a hard R.
Yes.
It's gorier than...
It's very gory.
It's gorier than Punisher Warzone. It is because they're trying to make the violence very realistic, where that was jokey. I
hear what you're saying, but
what I'm saying is that I would say that the readers, a lot of 2080s readers still, although they ended up veering towards an adult audience, are still teens that might not be able to buy a ticket into this thing. Although I did notice last night watching on Netflix, the Australian rating is MA15+, which means you only need to be, as I've noticed several times, with super gore fests. There's also nudity in the movie, and it's like MA15+.
Almost no nudity.
Well, enough.
It's like a frame.
Yeah, but 3 times.
I didn't even... I barely noticed.
Yeah, I noticed enough that I wasn't happy that it was in there. But anyway, we'll get to all that later on.
I think you'd blink and miss it. Oh, okay, anyway, that's fine. Whatever. Judge Dredd not famous for its nudity, but certainly famous for its over-the-top kind of like violence.
Yes.
Very
gore?
much so.
No.
I
would not say an issue of 2008 is not R-rated. You know what I mean?
I don't agree.
I mean...
I think, well, maybe an issue of 2000 AD isn't, but as I said last week, any film adaptation of Judge Dredd, I think is going to attract an R rating for violence.
Yeah, but nowadays, yeah, it would have in the old days. Nowadays, violence will only get you a 15+.
It's funny that it's MA, I didn't notice that it was MA15+, but certainly it had an R rating. Since we're talking about, we're starting from the end today.
Yeah.
The film's budget was, there's different reports. Karl Urban is on the record as saying it was less than $30 million.
Whoa, okay.
The figure that Wikipedia gives is $30 to $45 million, reflecting the kind of spread of reporting on its budget.
Okay.
It only made $41.5 million.
Okay.
Globally. It's since done very well on home media.
Oh, okay.
A very, very well-selling DVD, especially in the UK.
Okay.
Where it sold a lot. Millions of dollars worth.
Okay.
And despite what you said about the middling reviews, it quite critically well regarded and a high audience score.
Okay.
On the various reviewing websites. In the US, though, it only made $13.4 million across the entirety of North America.
Okay.
Which is terrible.
Well, I have some speculation about why that happened.
Yes.
Because the American audience does not know what Judge Dredd is. And they're only... when they hear Judge Dredd, they think of a Sylvester Stallone movie from 1995.
B?
Yeah.
And third, the R rating.
Right.
So those 3 things really hurt the film.
Yeah.
And probably also D, as you mentioned, comparisons with The Raid.
Right.
So maybe people in the US have seen, they don't know what Judge Dredd is, they just know there are 2 cool movies that have come out at the same time about invading a giant apartment block and fighting level by level. You see The Raid first, you think, I don't need to go see the second one.
Yeah.
Especially if there's in the papers it's saying things like, this film's like The Raid.
Yeah.
Which is what you heard.
Yeah.
So I'm not... and also, some people associated with the production have gone on record as saying that it wasn't marketed as well as it could have been, as I mentioned. Karl Urban especially, who's kind of passionate about the character in the film, he said in an interview that I read, Alex Garland, that's the writer, has gone on record to say that Dredd was a failure. I disagree. The movie itself was not a failure. In fact, it was a critical success. It just failed to perform at the box office. How does a movie with a 78% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes fail? Through zero audience awareness. Nobody knew that the movie was being released. Dredd represents a failure in marketing, not filmmaking.
Right. Okay. Okay, let's go through a little bit of the credits and stuff. So, actually, the credits all come at the end, but our director is Pete Travis.
Yes.
Don't really know anything about him.
Same.
The
There was
writer.
some conflict on the set,
Okay.
which I'll talk about later.
Right. Writer's Alex Garland, who's a very famous
Very famous.
writer. 28 Days Later, Sunshine,
Ex Machina.
Ex Machina,
He's directed
Annihilation.
that too. He directed both those films, yeah.
Right. So Civil Wars just came out.
Yeah.
Apparently, he wrote the Never Let Me Go, which I haven't seen, the Ishiguro adaptation.
I like the novel, but I've never seen the film.
Yeah, I haven't seen it either. And of course, 28 Years Later is about to come out, so
Oh, yeah.
just timely.
And he wrote The Beach. That was his debut
Right,
novel in the
that's
90s.
right.
That got turned into a film with Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yes.
So he's a big...
Directed by Danny Boyle, who
I think it was-
directed
yes.
28 Days Later
That's
as well.
correct,
So
that's correct.
there's a kind of circle of guys going
Yes.
here.
Yes. So he's... Yeah. He's a
Because
big
we'll
deal.
see, because like Domhnall Gleeson is in this, and
Yeah,
he's
an
in Ex
almost
Machina.
unrecognisable Domhnall Gleeson.
Yeah,
I had to check the credits in order to know who it was.
yeah. Anyone else? Oh yeah, Karl Urban. So has he? So he's been in some Marvel movies. He's
Not
in,
at this point, I don't
he's
think.
in Thor. Okay.
Oh, he
he's in
has, yes.
Thor.
Oh, yeah. He plays... who is it?
One of the Rainbow Bridge guards or something.
No, he becomes the Rainbow Bridge Guard after they get rid of Heimdall.
Oh,
I forget the name of his character, but he's hilarious.
but he's in all sorts of. He's a genre guy, right?
yeah, he's a
in.
genre guy.
He's in all of them. He's in.
He's in The Boys.
Okay.
He plays Billy Butcher in
Right.
The Boys.
He's in.
That's a Garth Ennis
Your
thing.
J.J. Abrams Star Trek. He's
Yes.
in Lord of the Rings.
Correct.
I'm probably forgetting 20 others.
Yep. He's one of us.
He's one of us. Absolutely.
I think he's great. In this
And if
especially.
I heard that in his audition for this, he said, "I'll only do it if I don't take the helmet off."
Amazing.
What a thing to say in your audition. It's not
Yeah.
like they approached him. He's an audition
Yeah.
for this thing.
I will only do this if we don't
Yeah.
take the helmet off. Of course, that's the famous thing about this movie is that Dredd never takes his helmet off.
Yes.
Unlike Dredd.
Yeah, that's right.
Unlike the Stallone one where he's got it off for almost all of the film.
That's right.
Big point in its favour.
Yeah. This movie's an hour and 35 minutes long
Great
with
length
credits.
for a film.
I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Now, we get much like last week's, the first 15 minutes of this movie, I was like, all in.
Yeah.
We get this vision of Mega City 1 as this...
Have we got a voiceover? This time not done by James Earl Jones.
Yes.
No title crawl. This time it's just Dredd himself. He tells us about Mega City 1. He explains that, it's got 400 million people. It's a new city rising, living... The ruins of the old and the new growths of the new living together in squalor and crime.
Yeah.
And we see, first thing about this is that it looks like a modern city.
Yes.
It doesn't look like a future city.
Yes.
It looks like a slum,
Yep.
except it's massive. It goes on for hundreds of kilometers. And rising out of the slums, we have, it's kind of like equidistantly placed,
Yep.
these huge towers.
It felt realistic. I don't know if it is, but it really felt realistic.
Yes.
There's touches of... It's interesting, all the cars on the street look like current day 2024 cars, but we've
Yes.
got these drones, these science fictional drones
Yes.
flying overhead.
Yes.
There's bits and pieces of like past and present,
Yes.
or sorry, future and present in there.
Yes. Yes. So you've got the judges have all this sci-fi gear.
Yeah.
Although it looks very kind of like... It doesn't have that, what I mentioned, the flamboyance. So
Right.
Dredd's doesn't have gold boots and gold
It's very
eagles.
restrained. Yeah, so he's wearing this kind
It's
of
much
armor.
more restrained.
Yeah, he's
and
got, yeah.
it feels slick and modern, the stuff that they have.
Yes.
The Law Master bikes, again, like they look like sci-fi bikes, but they look like something from the Matrix.
Right.
They're much more, like they're big and black and streamlined.
Yeah.
They don't look like the ones from last week where they were kind of cartoony
Yes.
Didn't look like they could handle. These bikes, these were the actual bikes that they're riding around. Karl Urban himself is riding the bike. He learned to ride a motorcycle so that he could... Why bother? He's wearing a fucking mask the whole time.
I noticed that those scenes where I was like, we're not far enough away for it to be a stuntman. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
it's him.
It's him on the bike,
which is impressive. Again, there are hints of the 2000 AD world.
Yeah,
we get, but it's all very low key.
It's blink and you miss it stuff,
which I think you have to do. At some point, when they made I think what's happened here is, first of all, the budget.
Okay.
This film does not have a big budget.
Yeah.
It's less than the budget for Dredd 95. Judge Dredd 95. If we believe Karl Urban, less than $30 million US. At this point, you've got to make a choice. There's not much you can do with $30 million. You have to choose what you're going to spend your money on.
Yeah.
And I think what we get here... So, already, aliens and robots are out. Because you don't have the budget for them.
Yeah.
A big kind of like science fiction set is out because you don't have the budget for it. What we have here, I think, is art from adversity. They've said we're going to have to make this world as much like kind of the modern world as possible because we have to. We have to use we have to use our materials. We have to use our locations. So what we'll do instead is we will make this it won't have the flamboyance. I keep coming back to that word. I think it really kind of describes. We won't like I said last week. We won't go Flash Gordon. We can't go Flash Gordon. We can't go all in on craziness. Instead, we'll go the opposite direction. We'll dial it way back. We'll make it like Die Hard.
Yep. Die Hard was another movie I thought about often watching this.
We'll make it like Die Hard, and it's going to be a day in the life of Judge Dredd when he's trapped in a mega apartment. Yeah. And he's going to have the high-tech gear, but everyone else is going to look... People are just going to be dressed the way they're dressed now. There's going to be kids wandering around. We'll have a few hints to remind people that... Like Easter eggs, even. So you see Easter eggs, like what in the initial chase scene that you mentioned, like the first 15 minutes, which is great. We see billboards flash by with stuff from the comic.
Yes.
One of the criminals has a backpack with Drock
spray painted on it. Okay. The one I noticed was Joe Saturday.
Yes.
So he was a character in an Alan Moore strip called Chrono Cops.
Oh, amazing.
That was a Time Twisters.
Oh my God, of course.
And
that's one of my favorite.
That Chrono Cops was itself a parody of the Dragnet parody from Mad, from EC Comics Mad.
It appeared in 2000 AD.
And it appeared in 2000 AD. And that was on a big builder. It was Joe Soap.
I missed that.
Yeah, and another one I noticed was we see a news feed. There's this riot happening, and it says Fergie Memorial Riots. Yeah, this is on screen for a second. Fergie was this character in the Day the Law Died storyline, who's this big, mentally challenged dude, this idiot who wore a red baseball hat, and we're going Easy the Ferg was his war cry. Easy the Ferg. I don't know why he said that. And he'd go around with a baseball bat, and he had these pet flies, etc.
He's Rob Schneider's character.
Well, Rob Schneider was named Fergie. Yes, he was named... I don't know. They have nothing to do... That Fergie in the comics
that's
was a big
annoying.
idiot.
That's another matter.
That's another matter. That was very annoying that Rob Schneider was named Fergie.
That's a fun Easter egg because, I mean, you're kind of saying 1995 is dead.
Fergie Memorial Riots, yes.
There's also, in that Chiron, that thing at the bottom is called a Chiron. We also get Stumgast used in recent riots.
Yes, I noticed that as well. So all that stuff's there, and we get there's lots of talk about isocubes, which I don't think we got in the 95 version, but it's a great word because you know immediately what it means.
No, there's no isocubes because they have that big jail out in the Cursed Earth.
Well, they do talk, but yes, that's right, in the 95
in the 95 one,
but in this movie, you know, you get 2 weeks in the isocubes. It's very obvious it's an isolation. We know what it means, so why not use that term? He has the gun and his bike are voice activated.
Yes.
Which comes straight out of the comics.
Well, Master, and we get a little... It's even got a little kind of like liquid crystal display.
Yes.
Where he'll say to it, "Hi X," and we'll see it.
Yeah.
Hi X flash up.
Yeah.
And then he'll shoot it. Boom.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so great.
Now the armor is... Again, they've gone very practical with it. It's like a leather jacket with probably Kevlar underneath, and the big gold eagle that's usually on one shoulder has been reduced to kind of a badge.
Just sort of an embossment.
An embossment, yes.
But he still has the badge, the Dredd badge.
He does have the Dredd badge, but it's all...
And the helmet, of course. The helmet is massive.
The helmet is very big. I will say I wonder if the helmets are actually designed in a way that they can't easily take them off, because none of the other judges take them off either. They all leave them on all the time. So I wonder if there's some way they've designed it so that it's, it's padded in such a way that it's not that easy to get in and out of.
Why judges never take their helmets off? So, I mean, it's fine.
Yeah, I think, Judge Hershey and Judge Anderson never wear helmets in the comic. I think because Brian Bolland draws beautiful women and just leaves their helmets off.
Judge Anderson doesn't wear one because it interferes with her psi abilities.
In the comic or in the movie? Definitely in the movie.
It's been a while since I read Judge Death, so I don't remember.
I don't remember that detail, but I'll tell you what, that's a big plot hole in this movie.
Why?
Because she can read the minds of judges.
Oh no, it just interferes with her abilities, not...
But why? Yeah, but why? How can she can...
Oh, I just figured
how can she psychically penetrate the helmet of two other judges in this movie?
It's not like Juggernaut's helmet. I think she just can't focus when she's wearing a helmet. It just bugs her, and she can't focus. I don't think the helmets themselves stop the psychic ability.
Okay.
For me, it's just, she just finds it distracting.
Okay.
I'm fine with it, Kumar. Sorry, mate.
Okay. So one thing we get that's different here is that this Dredd is not famous in Mega City 1. The perps don't see him and go, oh my god, it's Judge Dredd. They're just like, it's a judge. They don't know who he is. He's not...
You're right. Although, you're right. And the antagonists don't know who he is either. They would probably be a bit more wary if they did. Yeah. However, he is famous among the judges themselves.
Right.
Because eventually we get the antagonist more bribes 3 corrupt judges to come in and kill Dredd for her.
Yeah.
And they ask for a ridiculously high amount of credits. And she's like, why so much? And says, do you know who you've got here?
Yeah, right. Yes, that's right. That's right. That's right.
So he still is kind of a badass.
So it starts with a chase. There are some guys in a van doing this drug called slow-mo.
Yep.
Which is one of my favorite things about the movie, because they do this drug and it causes everything around them to appear to be in slow motion, and it allows for some amazing, beautiful visuals.
Visuals are fantastic, and
I don't know if it makes sense though. Well, in terms of
in real life, a drug that slows time down for a few seconds. Why would you ever do that?
Would that mean that you are moving super fast? Would you be able to dodge bullets?
No, because you're still moving the same speed. It's kind of a drug that would only exist in a film so that you can have these beautiful visuals. But I'm fine with it. Maybe there's a big euphoria.
I was fine with it too.
Maybe there's a big euphoria too. And we know that the visuals are beautiful, so it's kind of like an hallucinogen, because Mormor is in the bath in her introductory scene and she's on slow-mo. And
often when they're on slow-mo, they have these sparkles and stuff. They see all sorts of stuff around.
And she puts her hand in and out. The listeners can't see, but I'm moving my hand up and down. She puts her hand in and out of the bath and watches the water splashing. And Alex Garland in interviews has mentioned that they started developing this technique for the slow-mo technique for Never Let Me Go. He was inspired by slow motion documentary footage in wildlife documentaries where you have like a dolphin jumping out of the water, and he says often in this footage you're not looking at the dolphin, you're looking at the water droplets.
Right.
So, and speaking of the effect, it's mostly practical. Or when I say practical, it's not. These aren't computer images.
Oh, okay.
So they're actually shooting it with a high-quality digital camera and slowing down the footage, and then applying various filters sort of in post.
Yeah.
Also, you mentioned the gore. A lot of the gore happens during these slow-mo sequences where we have sort of like bullets going through people's cheeks or impacting in people's stomachs, and like their stomachs, like we see the impact. Like the flesh will be rippling.
Yeah.
Again, this is a practical effect. They used compressed air.
Okay.
And shot it in slow-mo.
Yeah.
That's why it looks so cool.
Right.
I have a counterpoint to what you said earlier. I think a lot of this violence in the slow-mo segments is so over the top that it's shocking but not grotesque or horrifying.
No, I disagree. I think it's grotesque. I never felt like when the Punisher shot that parkour guy with a grenade launcher at any of the violence in this movie. It was all gross out violence to me.
I think it...
I never laughed.
No, it's not funny. No, I don't think it's funny. But I think it's more... it's grotesque, but not in a sleazy way. I think it has a kind of over-the-top beauty is what they're going for. I think I don't feel like I'm watching actual people. I don't feel like I'm seeing horrifying injuries happen to real people.
Oh, right.
Instead, it feels more like a dream sequence. Is what I mean. And that's very subjective.
Yeah. No, I did feel like they were trying to be realistic, like showing realistic injuries.
But yes, they are
but
realistic
at the same
injuries,
time,
but it has that filter, that hazy filter over the top and all the sparkles and everything. If it was just slow-mo without the warping and the bright lights and all that and the music,
yeah,
because we've sort of got.
But there are lots of violence like that. Like when they find these bodies that have been thrown off from the tower. Yes. We're exposed to the corpses. Yes. That kind of stuff. There's no music or slow-mo in those bits.
There's still graphic violence, I agree. But I feel like the most graphic bits are all contained within the slow-mo sequences.
Okay.
So I feel like it's trying to do something aesthetic as much as it's just trying to do over-the-top violence.
Yeah, I wonder why I'm resistant to it.
It's alright to be horrified by violence.
No, it's because the interesting thing is what I'm thinking about is Tom Savini. Because Tom Savini was a war photographer. He was a Vietnam war photographer, right. And then he came over, and then he was doing the gore effects for like Dawn of the Dead, your first Friday the 13th. So he had seen these actual injuries, wow. And then he was reproducing them in these movies, and somehow it's like you're watching it going, how'd they do that, or something like that. I'm not really freaked out by the Tom Savini gore, even though he saw this stuff for real and was reproducing it on film. And I don't know, I'm being hypocritical in some way.
I don't think so. It's just not your style. You don't like it. That's fine.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, maybe because those movies are wrapped around some ridiculousness, whereas this movie takes itself very seriously.
It does, and yet these sequences, we're asked to take them seriously as well because they're on drugs.
Yeah.
And yet they're so cartoony, the violence.
Yeah.
So there's a tonal shift there. Yeah, I think you're onto something.
Okay. So he chases down this.
We'll start talking about
back in the van.
The plot.
He chases down this van. The van. There's a big chase. They crash. One of the guys gets away into like a arcade, like a mall.
Well, it's the bottom floor of a mega. Oh, right. Of a mega city.
Right.
It's,
and
peach trees.
The guy takes a hostage. The bad guy. And then Dredd turns his gun onto
it's not peach trees, it's just something else. Yeah, go on, sorry.
Yeah, he turns his gun onto what's called hot shot. And it fires into the guy's mouth and sets him on fire from the inside. The hostage gets
You're right,
away.
that's another very gory sequence.
Well, yeah, I was disappointed. I thought he was going to shoot the hostage. I was like, for me, this was the moment like when the perp pulled the gun in the 95 version before Dredd shot him. Mm. I was like, is he going to kill this hostage?
Did Dredd kill the hostage or the
I thought is Dredd going to kill this hostage to kill the perp? And I was kind of hoping it would happen, and it didn't. But anyway,
I think that would be a bit much this early in the film. On the other hand, he doesn't care about her safety.
Yes.
Whereas I think Sylvester Stallone Judge Dredd, where it was very self-consciously trying to make him heroic, that Dredd only kills in self-defense. Yeah. You remember the perp he sentences to death pulls a gun on him.
That's what I was just saying. Yeah.
Yes. Here, Dredd just shoots him.
Yes, that's right.
While he's holding a gun.
That is true.
And I remember watching that and thinking, this isn't how you negotiate. The guy even lampshades it. He says, you're a terrible negotiator. Yeah. He goes, here's what you do. If you put down your gun now and let her go, you can have life in the ISO cubes without parole. Mm-hmm. And he goes, that's your offer? You're terrible at this, Dredd. He goes, well, the other option is death. So what you going to do, hotshot? Yeah. And he goes, what'd you say? He says, I said, hotshot. And the gun goes, hotshot. Bleep, bleep, bleep. And then he just shoots him. Yeah. He put the hostage's life in extreme danger when he just didn't care. He didn't care. And wow, this is a different Judge Dredd to the 1995 one. Yeah. He just doesn't. And she thanks him. She doesn't say, what the hell was that? Yeah. I could have been killed, you crazy man. What is this? She just says, thank you, Judge. Yeah. This is a different world. Yes. This is a very Judge Dredd kind of world, and I'm here for it. As I said, this first 15 minutes, I'm all in.
So now he goes back to the station, and he meets a new judge, a rookie. Yes. Judge Anderson. So this is Judge Anderson from comics. Now, she's a psychic. She's a mutant.
Yes.
And
normally not tolerated.
Normally not tolerated. Normally would not be allowed to be a judge. But because she's the strongest psychic they've ever met, they've decided to bring her in.
Because they're losing the war on the streets.
They're losing the war on the streets. So this is a bit of a difference from the comic where there is a side division.
Yes.
Where there's lots of psychics, and it's like not only condoned, it's like they're part of the force.
So here we're getting a little bit, it's a bit darker here. Well, we don't have the budget for a side division.
No,
so
absolutely not.
We're going to go a bit darker and say...
And
normally mutants are summarily killed, and that's why we don't see any.
Right.
The only one that are allowed to live are the ones that are useful and present as normal humans.
Yeah.
It's a bit dark.
Yeah. So I think they say she took the test and she failed by 3 points or something like that.
3 points, but still a fail.
They want her to go out on like a assessment with Judge Dredd.
Yeah.
I liked this
Yeah.
dynamic because this is how it works in the comic. Because in the comic, Wagner knows Judge Dredd is one-dimensional.
Yes.
He just upholds the law. That is his dimension.
Yes.
That's it, period.
And
so it's all the other characters around him that are like, Judge Dredd, what do you think of this awesome tank we built so you can cross Treasure Earth? He's like...
It's all right.
It's all right. They're like, and the guy's thinking, Judge Dredd doesn't care about anything. Another story, somebody's like, Judge Dredd doesn't like music. You know, it's the judges around him who are slightly more like the reader... that allow us to understand this world and Judge Dredd himself.
Exactly. That's well done, Kumar. In fact, Garland himself deliberately wrote the screenplay to be like that. Right. He says Judge Dredd can't change.
Yes, exactly.
He can't undergo
develop
character development, or any character development that does occur. It happens at a quote unquote glacial pace.
Yeah.
Years will go by.
Yeah.
So instead, if we have a character for the audience to undergo a kind of development arc, in a standard storytelling arc, it's got to be someone else. Anderson is that character. Yeah. She undergoes character development throughout the course of the film, quite clearly. She's very shaky and unready at the first. Dredd actually says to her, "You don't look ready."
Yeah.
She says, and then by the end of it,
he says, "You look ready."
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yep. That's
perfect.
a good little touch.
And it couldn't be more different from where Stallone had to choose, he had to... he had to figure out what kind of judge he wanted to be.
Yes.
He had to have a choice between, liberty or authoritarianism.
Yeah.
It's just like, get that shit out of my Judge Dredd.
Yep.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So here we meet a crime boss.
It's More, played by Lena Headey.
Yeah, Headey.
Cersei Lannister.
Yes. She was also Sarah Connor on the Sarah Connor Chronicles.
I never saw that.
It's terrible.
She's in Centurion's movie. She'll be back.
Oh, okay.
She's done a couple of comic book movies.
Okay, good. She's all scarred up, but she's a crime boss. She's the one that manufactures this slow-mo drug.
We don't know that yet, but she's taken slow-mo when we're introduced.
So some guys have done some crew have done some bad stuff, and she has them skinned and thrown off the top of this block tower that they're living in.
On slow-mo, so
that they experience their deaths in slow motion.
Thankfully, they don't experience the skinning in slow motion, because that would have been truly horrific. That's what I thought was happening at first. Luckily, they give them the slow-mo before they throw them off the balcony, so they experience the fall in slow motion.
Right. They're in a tower called Peach Trees, which is not a funny name for a tower. It's not Ricardo Montalban Tower. It's a...
No, so again, I guess we're trying to make... We're leaving the 2000 AD goofy references for Easter eggs, and the lived-in world of Judge Dredd is feeling a bit more grounded.
Yes.
Peach Trees, incidentally, is the name of the restaurant where Alex Garland and John Wagner first met.
Oh, okay. Okay, we learned this is Tower of 75,000. I love that detail.
Yep.
That's the kind of stuff that was...
It's a kilometre tall.
Yeah, that's a Judge Dredd detail, which is missing from 95 Judge Dredd.
It's massive, and it's just squatting inside a kind of slum.
Yeah.
Like a real-world kind of slum.
So the judges are getting all these calls. They have to choose which call they're going to take, and Judge Dredd gives the choice to Anderson. Which call do you want to take? She says, let's go see those three bodies at Peach Trees Tower.
This is such a good dynamic, because he makes her do everything.
Yes. Yes.
He's always like, what's the call, rookie?
Yeah.
You're the judge.
Is his voice quite right? I feel like he didn't quite have a Judge Dredd voice.
He's doing his best.
He is doing his best.
He found it really hard to do this voice.
His scowl is also not... Stallone looked the part, as terrible as he was in it. I mean, this is a dumb thing to complain about, but we have an idea about Judge Dredd's scowl.
I got you. I love Karl Urban's performance. Unlike
Of course.
Stallone's,
Of course.
unlike Stallone's mask, you can't see his eyes. Like with Stallone's Dredd mask, you could actually see his eyes. You could see most of his face. He could have just kept the damn helmet on. You can't see. The only part of Karl Urban's face you can see is sort of the bottom of his nose, his mouth, and his chin. He worked really hard to act with about 4 square inches of face.
Yep.
He's just doing things with his jaw all the time. He's sticking it out. He's pulling it in.
Yeah, but you know, some of those when those other judges show up, there was one of those guys. I was like, that guy looks like Judge Dredd.
He did look. I kept confusing them. It was annoying.
Yes.
Well, don't
Because the guy had the chin.
don't have another judge that looks like Judge Dredd.
Yeah.
That's really throwing him off. This isn't like a comic where you can have his badge saying Dredd in every panel.
Yeah.
Don't have a judge that looks like Judge Dredd. That's one of my few complaints, I think. They really just need to
Well, there was a moment when Judge Dredd gets shot later in the movie. I was like, was that Judge Dredd or another guy? But you see the badge is Dredd. It's very clear. They put it in shot.
Oh, yeah.
They make sure you can see the badge. So you know it was him.
But every now and again, like there's some frenetic action scenes where they're shooting one another.
Absolutely. The first time he finds out there's a crooked judge and there's a fight, I'm like, who's who in this fight?
Yeah, Judge Dredd's getting choked out, and he's going, and I'm like, that's not something Judge Dredd would do.
I thought that was the bad guy.
I thought that was the bad guy, and then the guy says, choke on it, Dredd. And it's like, oh, I'm looking at Dredd.
Yeah.
Then he kind of like karate chops him in the throat.
And that's not even the guy that I thought looked like Judge Dredd.
No, it wasn't. All right, so by pure chance, Anderson chooses peach trees, the triple homicide.
Now, there's a
fatality,
moment in
rather.
this scene which I loved when they go into the tower.
Oh, yeah, it's so
where there's a homeless man, and Tris Anderson, what's the penalty for that?
says, look,
3 weeks in the ice cubes.
But shouldn't we prioritize the murder?
Yeah.
And he says, correct. Don't be here when we get back.
But I love that he was like, this is placing Judge Dredd in the Wagner version of Judge Dredd.
Yeah.
Which is not a good guy. This is the villain, should be the villain of the movie.
Well, vagrancy is, it's a crime. But also, there's a procedure.
That's right.
Judge Dredd's not a lunatic that's giving out parking tickets when murder's going on all around him. He's prioritizing.
Yes.
And he's asking.
But he is still sentencing a homeless man to 3 weeks in an ISO cube.
It's the law.
It's the law, exactly. I love that little detail that it was in here.
I like everything about it. I like that everything about it. I like that it's extremism, but it's also realistic in the sense that you don't have time for this right now.
Yes.
And he's actually giving him a warning.
Yeah.
But vagrancy is
he
a crime
does
in
it.
our world
At this
too,
point,
you
he
know.
asks. There is a story arc where Dredd is training a rookie in the comics. I think it was the Tale of the Dead Man. But anyway, so he asks her, "Why do you want to be a judge?" This is an interesting question because nobody ever asked Judge Dredd why he wanted to. Well, he was cloned, so he had no choice in the matter. But anyway. She says, I thought I could make a difference. And he says, admirable. And I like the way he delivered that line. It felt like real Judge Dredd. He kind of, like he doesn't actually think it's admirable.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it. I really love Karl Urban's performance in this.
So now we get the control room where this Domhnall Gleeson is the tech guy in the tower.
Unrecognizable. He's got artificial eyes. He's got long, stringy hair.
Yeah.
He's pale as anything. They've got him under white light all the time.
Yeah.
And he's also very, very nervous.
Yes. And he's got these digital eyes, like bionic eyes, which we learn later is because Mama
She popped his eyes out. Ugh, so that to replace him.
And he's kind of under her, he's under her thumb. Like he's abused by her.
He's a reluctant.
He doesn't want to be doing this, but she's bad news and she's...
she makes him do stuff at knife point.
Yes, absolutely. She forces him to call the cops and tell lies to the police about what's going on in the tower at knife point.
Yes.
Threatens to kill him all the time, to do all these things for her.
Yeah.
By the way, he's in this control room. The music he's listening to now, last week we had some White Zombie.
Yes.
This week we had the theme song from Snuffbox, the sketch comedy starring Matt Berry and Rich Fulcher, and Matt Berry did the theme song. So we're listening to Matt Berry sing the Snuffbox theme song in the Judge Dredd, in this control room in this Judge Dredd movie.
Amazing.
What a bizarre choice. But I did think, what if Matt Berry did the whole soundtrack? That would have been something else too.
The soundtrack for this movie is okay. It's not as good as...
No, it's bland. It's weird,
it's just
bland,
boring, kind of
generic.
industrial.
I had the subtitles on Netflix. It was always like bass, heavy bass electronic music. Like that was kind of it the whole way through. It didn't do anything, but I loved hearing Snuffbox. I couldn't believe it.
It's fine. It's just... This is a lived-in world. They're just listening to garbage and industrial metal.
Yeah. So they come into the judges come into the tower. They go up to this room where a bunch of people are on the slow-mo drug. They kill the people. This is where we get the sequence you're talking about. And they catch one guy alive.
Yep.
And
Kay is his name.
Kay is his name, right. And they're gonna... She's 90s... Anderson, using her psychic powers, is 99% sure this is one of the guys... that skinned those three perps that they threw off the balcony. Yes. So they're like, okay, let's take him back to the station for questioning.
Yep.
Mama doesn't want
Dredd says, can't execute a perp on 99%.
That was an odd thing for him to say. I thought Judge Dredd would execute a man when he...
Only if he was certain, because that's the law.
I'm not so sure about that, but okay.
No, it's...
Okay, I'll buy it.
Because, remember, this is just an average day for Dredd.
Yes.
And also, he's shepherding a rookie, right?
Yes.
The thing is, this seems like the craziest thing. If this happened to you or me, this would be the worst day of our lives. Yeah. This would be the craziest thing that ever happened to anyone, ever. The day you had to fight through an apartment block. For Judge Dredd, it's just like some day.
Right.
For him, it was a Tuesday.
Yeah. So... They're going to take us... Now, Mama doesn't want this guy to get out because he's got info that he doesn't want...
We don't know what it is at this point, but it's because she's the prime distributor and manufacturer of the slow-mo drug.
And it's all happening in this tower.
Yes.
She doesn't want that coming out.
No.
So she's like, okay,
she makes Domhnall Gleeson
activate the war protocols, which means this big, like iron shielding comes down around the whole tower.
Yep.
And he radios.
No radio signals can come in or out.
Yes, but he does call the cops beforehand and says, we're doing DEFCON drills today, so don't send any judges out or whatever.
Yeah, don't be alarmed by this. Yeah.
Okay, so now we've got the setup for the movie, which is basically we're going to have the following 75 minutes of the movie are going to be
Judge Dredd and Anderson are trapped in the apartment building. Yes. They've got to die hard their way out of it.
Yes. So they're attacked by a bunch of guys. They fight back. There's one guy that's left alive, and Judge Dredd says to Anderson, "You've got to execute him because he assault on a judge. The sentence is death." So
she attempted murder of a judge.
Yep. She kills this guy straight up. They start making their way up the tower. They got to find a way out now that the blast shields are down. Mm-hmm. At one stage, they go into this woman's apartment.
Anderson uses her psychic
power to find out the lady's name and says, "Kathy, let us in," and she lets them in. And then as they're leaving, she sees that the woman's husband was the man she had executed on the ground floor. Thought this was going to go somewhere. Doesn't really. I mean, in terms of Anderson, at the end of the movie, I thought she was going to say, "I don't want to be a judge." You know what I mean? I felt like it was kind of maybe creeping in that direction.
It doesn't really go anywhere. It's just a kind of like a
reality check is what it is, sort of, for her.
It's part of her. It's part of her arc, I guess.
Yeah, maybe it's part of telling the audience what a judge is.
Yes.
Really.
Yes, and she's learning and we're learning.
Yeah.
And of course, and there's extra pathos because the woman only helps them. She doesn't like the judges. I mean, her husband's a gang member. She just wants them out, and she tells them how to get off this level. She says, "I just don't want you out there killing anyone's husbands." So she literally says that.
Yeah.
And because these gang members have families, not only do they have families, but it's kind of like a nice house, and there's a framed picture, and they're like holding the baby and smiling. Just like, this guy's day job, well, he's unemployed. 96% unemployment in Peachtree.
So we didn't. The thing we didn't mention is that when they blasted us down, Mama said, either go into your rooms or help kill Judge Dredd. There's a reward if you kill Judge Dredd.
Yeah.
Or these two judges.
Yeah.
If you don't want to be involved, stay in your rooms. If you help them, you're dead meat.
Yeah.
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 So this is why these gangs have formed. Like, we need this money, we'll go hunt Judge Dredd.
Well, the whole building is controlled by Mormor's clan, the Mormor clan. Because we get a kind of... There's a med tech, a guy who's kind of like judge adjacent. Mm-hmm. He helps the judges as soon as they come in. He's like a paramedic. For some reason, he has data on Not just the gangs operating in the building, but the spread of the gangs over the last few years. He's got a graphic where it shows Mormore's gang slowly taking over the whole apartment. Why did you have this graphic? Doesn't matter. Helps explain what's going on. So the whole of Peach Trees is filled with Mormore's people.
Yeah.
There is no safe place. Every level is going to have members of her gang looking for you, and it's no safety, because if you try and take shelter with someone, they're going to get killed. Yeah. And the medtech himself, this guy who's sort of on the side of law enforcement, he's associated with the infrastructure of the state, I suppose, or whatever the state is in Mega City 1. He refuses to let them in the clinic, which they could have holed up in and defended.
He says it's neutral.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he goes, this is neutral, you're picking sides. And he goes, no, there are no sides, because this building's full of,
they're all against you.
Thousands and thousands of gang members, and you're just two judges. You don't have a side. You're just dead meat.
Yeah.
Or you're already dead, or something like that. And the judge's just like, oh, this sucks. We just got Karl Urban's jaw poking out. It's great.
Yeah. So I don't think we need to go through all this. Is basically there. It
just keeps escalating. There's
kinetic
a great
action as
there's a great scene where Mormore has a series of sort of automated gun turrets.
Yes.
Not automated. They're hand operated.
Yeah, they set up these turrets to fire across the square, the plaza, at the other side of the block. When Dredd appears there,
this was a big part of the shoot. I think it took about 2 weeks for them to do this whole sequence.
Yeah,
because there's a lot of composite shots. Peach Trees itself was a location they found. So the interior shots of Peach Trees, where we're looking up or down the central shaft, because the inside of Peach Trees is kind of hollow.
Yeah, it's like a plaza. There's a plaza down at the bottom. Yeah.
Yes, and it just goes all the way up. That's why you can throw someone from the top floor all the way down to the bottom. That is a location somewhere in Johannesburg, I think, in South Africa.
Okay.
Where 3 buildings come together.
Oh, okay.
Not four, but 3. That's why we see 3 walls most of the time. And they've just done some computer effects to make it seem like it's going up into infinity.
Right.
So they have this externals. We've got sets where the bullets are flying everywhere and getting blown up. They just composite all. And it's very smooth. It looks fantastic. But it was a big part, probably the biggest part of the shoot, this scene.
Right. Right. There's a moment in here I liked where some kids, probably 12, 13 years old, decide they're going to take on Judge Dredd.
Yeah.
And they show up with the guns. Now, we know what Dredd does to people that
try to take a job.
Murder.
You try to attempt to murder, he kills them. But we get a hint that things are different for kids.
Yeah.
Because he mentions...
They're Juve cubes or something.
Juve cubes, which means that there's a... Juve cubes, it sounds great.
Yeah.
Which means that there's obviously a different standard of law enforcement or of sentencing for children. So he stuns them, he doesn't kill them. It would have been a lot for even this kind of very gritty Judge Dredd to murder children.
But it felt like it was on the cards. The movie was very good about playing it like the tension.
Yes.
As like, we know who Judge Dredd is at this point. We know what is done to people who try to murder judges.
Yep.
And it was like, oh boy, is Judge Dredd going to kill these children?
No, thankfully he doesn't. He just stun them. But at this point, Kay gets the drop on Anderson.
Yeah, okay. Sexually assaults her.
No, does he?
Oh yeah, he gets her on his knees and he's like, "Now that'll finally shut you up."
No, that's.
This is in the dream. It's in a dream sequence, but
that was a little earlier.
Okay.
All right.
I'll
cycle back to that.
Do we need this? Do we need to see this 3 times in the movie? We just let us know that she knows what he's visualizing. Why did we have to make this actress have a nude scene? Why did we have to have this scene where she's on her knees, even if it's in his mind?
It's because it's a great bait and switch. Look,
is it a great bait and switch? It is a bait and switch.
Okay, maybe great's a bit much. Look, you could probably lose it, but to me, the nudity's barely. It's like a frame twice. It's not 3 times. It's twice.
No, it's 3. 100%. It's 3 times because
What's
we see
the
it once
time?
It's in the first sequence. She's like a pole dancer, and then there's a scene where she's like on her back, and then we get that scene of her on her back again later in the movie.
Okay.
Yeah.
And she is naked from the back in one scene as well, if that's her and not a stand-in. You know what I mean? The character's naked. He's trying to freak her out.
Yes, he's trying to think quote-unquote bad thoughts
to
she
mess her up.
Yeah.
And she's just not impressed by it, actually. I think it kind of shows that she's tough, because he as you said, he imagines her on her knees, and then she just walks in kind of like stage right, says, "Hey, I can play mind games too," and then he looks down and it's Mormor down there and she's bit off his junk.
Yeah, which we know she actually did from her record. Yes. She actually did to some
they said feminized, which is kind of like not a very PC way to say emasculated.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't have a problem with that. The whole mind rape sequence.
Yeah.
Because again, Dredd beats the living shit out of him.
Yeah.
Judge Dredd just beats people up when he wants information out of people.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
He doesn't need a warrant to do that. He's Judge Dredd.
Yeah.
He wants to know why Mormor is so determined to stop them from leaving with him. He beats the hell out of him, he refuses to talk, and then Anderson says, "You don't need to beat him up. He doesn't need to confess. I can get it out of him."
Right.
Then we get this mind rape sequence where she violates him, actually. So it's like he tries to violate her, but she violates him, and we know she violates him because he's like completely zoned out, like he's completely horrified. He's got 1,000-yard stare, and he wets himself.
Yes.
So I hear what you're saying, and sexual violence is pretty grotesque, but I feel like she turns the tables on him, and he's almost the victim in this situation.
Yeah.
It's fine. I mean, it's not. Yeah, you could lose it. I'm not attached to it, but I think it's okay. So fast forward back to Anderson's been captured. He's captured her with her own lawgiver. I thought that's a problem. You can't threaten a judge with their own lawgiver because we know that it's DNA identified.
Yeah, and it blows up on him.
Yeah, but not in this bit. But then she's sort of holding her fingers on the trigger and his hands on her hand. I was thinking, he must know you can't hold a judge.
This was a point that bothered me. I thought in this world,
everyone would know.
Perps would know you can't pick up a judge's gun.
But he's just...
It must happen often enough that people know don't do that. That's why it's there.
I agree. I think it's a slight... I agree. And I thought of that when he was doing it. But then I thought back, he tried to hold her up earlier with her own lawgiver, and it's only luck that her finger was on the trigger and he didn't set it off.
Yeah, okay.
So I feel like there's some foreshadowing there that he doesn't know what's going on.
Maybe, but what about the whole world?
Yeah.
As I'm saying.
It doesn't.
I wouldn't think.
You would know that you can't. And he says, "I've always wanted one of these."
Yeah.
If you've always wanted one, wouldn't you know the most important thing about it, which is that it blows up if it's not a judge that picks it up?
Yep.
No, it's a bit of a plot hole, I agree.
Yep.
Judge Dredd, they've survived this enormous, like, Mormor lays waste to an entire level of peach trees trying to shoot Judge Dredd. Everyone in it dies, men, women, and children. The only people that survive are Kay, Anderson, and Dredd, and that's because he uses high X to blast their way out of the building to a kind of a skating rink that's on the outside, about 500...
Oh, it's a half pipe. It's a skateboard half pipe.
Skateboard half pipe, on the outdoor, 750 metres up.
Yeah.
From ground level.
Yes, but we've seen it before.
Yes.
They have established it.
It's a real thing.
Yeah.
The mega towers just have bits on the outside every now and again, I guess, so people can go outside.
Yeah, how does the blast shielding work around? Does it just go around?
Well, they were trapped outside.
Oh, that's right.
Unfortunately, they couldn't stay there because there was no way...
No, but I mean, how would the skate... So if there's a thing outside the tower, when the blast shielding comes down...
Oh, presumably the ingress and egress is somewhere else, and they have to make their way to it. Because there were only walls where that half pipe was.
All right.
So presumably their point of entrance or exit was somewhere else and blocked off.
Okay.
And they couldn't... And so that's why Dredd and Anderson couldn't stay where they were and wait for backup, because... They know that Mormor's gang will come and get them there because there's only one way in and out, which is the hole he just blew.
Okay.
So they have to go back in. Yeah. They've got to safety, it seems like. Yeah. They have to go straight back in.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah. Full on.
There is a bit here where he gets on the PA system for the tower, and he says, "Mama is not the law, I am the law." This is where we get the "I am the law" line. But they have Batman begins it to, like, give him a logical rationale for saying "I am the law."
It's fine. I like that this Dredd doesn't have catchphrases.
He does say it's judgment time at one stage, which was weird.
That's how he finishes That's how he finishes his announcement.
Yeah.
As for you, Mormor, judgment time.
Yeah.
And Felix, I was watching this with Felix. May 15, he's old enough. Yeah. And he said, "Judgment time."
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's like, mate, you should have watched the Stallone one.
Yeah.
They were throwing everything out there trying to give Stallone's Dredd a catchphrase.
Yeah. I knew you were going to say that. Now the backup judges show up, the crooked judges. That's another series of fights.
Because after they've laid waste to that level, one of Momo's cronies says, how are we going to stop this? That didn't stop him. How are we going to stop this guy? And she says, call 911. Call 911? It's a good line.
Yeah.
But would there be 911 in this place? It's in America, I guess. Mega City 1 is canonically in America.
It is. Yeah, of course it is.
But wouldn't this be a reference to the old world? Like,
it does seem like it, but maybe it's
you still call 911 to get judges?
Because they never... I don't remember them ever saying 911 in the comics.
Oh,
I don't know how
No, they wouldn't.
I don't know how you call a judge. I think judges are always around.
Yeah. Well, I think she could have said call the cops, but call 911 is a good line, even if it takes me out of the movie a tiny bit.
Yeah.
So then the corrupt judges come. We have that sequence we mentioned where they tell Momo that she doesn't know what she's dealing with and that they need 1 million credits in order to take out this judge because it's not just any judge. Then we get the sequence with the choking and the killing.
Yes.
Dredd karate chops a guy to death.
Yeah. Anderson has been captured at some stage.
Yeah. The K captured her in the...
Right.
When Dredd was stunning the children.
Right. That's right.
Captures her with her own lawgiver. And then he tries to shoot her with the lawgiver, and she's just completely confident because she knows what's about to happen. Sure enough, it blows his hand off.
Yeah.
And then she spin kicks him to death, I guess. Or maybe he bleeds out from his hand being blown off. Because in the next scene, he's dead.
Yes.
And she escapes. She gets a gun. She starts shooting perps. Everyone just shoots. Like, Dredd and Anderson just kill people all the time.
Yeah.
Shoot them in the back a lot.
Yeah.
Again, not in self-defense. These are people these are armed gang members who are trying to kill judges.
Yeah.
Their sentence is death.
Yeah.
Bam, they're gone. They're dead. Dredd and 2 of the remaining 3 judges get in a firefight in the drug lab, where they're making slow-mo. One of the judges, the guy that looks a bit like Judge Dredd, gets kind of a great speech about Mega City 1 being a meat grinder, where people go in one end, meat comes out the other, and judges turn their handles. Not bad.
Yeah.
Kind of nihilistic. Yeah. Kind of felt like a 2000 AD kind of quote. Judge Dredd takes out one of the judges, but he gets shot with an armor-piercing round and collapses. And Karl Urban is... He's like wimpy. He looks really miserable.
Yeah.
And the guy comes up to shoot him, and Karl Urban's mouth is like, it looks really sad. He's like, his bottom lip is almost quivering, and he says, "Wait." And then the judge goes on this rant. He's like, "The Judge Dredd is saying, wait. You're begging me for a few more minutes of your miserable life. I'm disappointed in you, Dredd. Wait for what?" And then he's shot. It's Anderson. And he says, "Wait for her to shoot you." Great.
How did you know he was going to show up at that moment?
How did he know? He didn't, as far as I could tell. Because she's right behind... As soon as she's arrived, she shot him. So how did he know she was coming? Maybe he saw her in the distance.
Did he know she had escaped from capture?
If he saw her, he did. My headcanon is he saw her maybe up high and she had to make her way down. I feel like the scene... The thing is, you can't have it both ways. This scene, it's only cool if Dredd says, "Wait for her to shoot you," if we didn't know she was going to shoot him.
Oh, right.
So we can't have a scene where Dredd spies her.
Yeah.
But then it also, why would Dredd say, "Wait"?
Yeah.
Like, he is famously a stoic badass.
Yeah.
Why would he say, "Wait," if he didn't know rescue was seconds away?
Yeah.
Doesn't quite... It's probably my least favourite bit in the movie. It doesn't quite work. I can see what they were trying to do. They reached for it, but they didn't quite make it.
He finally makes it up to the penthouse, and Mama, she has wired herself to blow up the entire building, or the top 100 floors, if her heart stops.
Yes.
She's put this thing in her arm. He throws her out the window.
It's a great thing where he says, "What do you think that..." First he shoots her.
Yeah.
So it's just like that first scene again, with the hostage scene, except now this time... Momo's got a whole building hostage.
Yeah.
And Dredd himself hostage. And it's... The storytelling... The writing is good because we should have no doubt about what's going to happen. We saw it at the very start of the movie. Dredd's not impressed. He doesn't care about hostages. He only cares about stopping you from breaking the law and punishing you.
Yeah.
And yet, the scale is so much more, but it doesn't matter. It's only a difference of degree, not of kind. Dredd doesn't care. He shoots her. It's shocking. But we shouldn't have been shocked because his character hasn't changed across the course of the movie. He's still the same guy that endangered that hostage in the first scene. It's almost incidental that he saved her.
Yeah.
Because he was just... And that's what he does to Momo. He shoots her. Then he says, "What do you think the range on that transmitter is?" So she's bleeding out. 100 meters? 200 meters? Through concrete? We're a kilometer up here. Let's see if it can signal through a kilometre of concrete. Drags her to the balcony, just like what happened to those guys at the start. Then he makes her take slow-mo.
Yes, that's right. That's right. He adds torture.
He can. Cruel and unusual punishment. It's fine in the Judge verse. Dredd determines the punishment.
Yeah.
He hits her up on slow-mo, and then he throws her off. And again, another great sequence. Down she goes in slow-mo. Feels like about 5 minutes.
It's very much like the Hans Gruber scene, though.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Very much. But it's okay. Because there's a cool slow-mo drug happening. And then, a bit grotesque, we actually see her impact on the ground.
Yes.
From sort of the perspective of the ground.
Yes.
And her face kind of squishes.
Yes.
They must have done it with glass like Barbarella. Her face kind of squishes on the ground and then all this blood squirts out. Oh. And then the transmitter signals, but Dredd was right. Its signal is not strong enough to go through a kilometre of concrete. The bombs are not set off. Yeah. But again, it didn't even matter. Dredd doesn't care.
Yeah.
He doesn't care.
Yeah.
They leave. There's a scene a little earlier where Anderson lets Domhnall Gleeson go. Yep. She takes the information she needs out of his head and then just lets him go. And Dredd's like, aiding and abetting a felon is a punishable offence. Punishable by however many months in the ISO cubes. She goes, doesn't matter. I already know that I failed because someone took my gun off me. Right at the start, Dredd tells them the conditions that are failing. If you get your gun taken off you, it's an automatic fail. She says, I already know that I failed, but for the rest of my assessment, I'm still a judge. And I've judged him and I've let him go. And Dredd just doesn't say anything. He just stands there with his jaw poking out. We don't know what he's thinking. So she's decided she's failed. They leave. The head judge from the first scene comes up, asks Dredd how she went, says, did she pass? And Dredd says, she passed.
Yeah. And then we get credits. And there's a pretty big credit for Wagner and Ezquerra in this.
It's the very first credit.
Yeah.
It's the first thing we see, which is nice.
Yeah.
I noticed how it's just Wagner and Ezquerra and not Pat Mills this time.
Yeah, or any of the other artists. Like, we had the big chart last week. The table.
Yeah. They've renegotiated. Whoever sold the rights this time has renegotiated the deal.
Yeah.
Just Wagner and Ezquerra now. It's probably Wagner himself is responsible. He certainly had a big role in the movie. Unlike 1995 Dredd, where very few 2000 AD staff were involved in any way. It was just that one guy.
Right.
Who worked on pre-production. Here, Wagner was involved right through production. In fact, Alex Garland would send him scripts, and Wagner would rewrite Dredd's dialogue.
Huh. Okay.
To make it more Dredd-like.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. Quote from Alex Garland, I wanted him to actually work on the film as a proper paid part of the team, which he was. He would always be there from my point of view to keep track of his character and to make sure we were doing it right. I would send him the drafts. He would change lines, which I would accept happily. The short answer here, as far as adaptation is concerned, we weren't trying to reinvent Dredd. We were trying to be appropriately respectful to the character.
Yeah, Judge Dredd created by John Wagner and Karl Urban. Huge credit. It's the first
very big credit and the very first one we see.
Yeah. Okay, trivia time, I guess.
I don't have a lot of trivia. As we said, Alex Garland started writing the script for this in about, I think, 2006 or something, when he was working on Sunshine, or perhaps 28 weeks later.
Okay.
His original draft was about Judge Death.
Okay.
Everyone wants to write a Judge Death.
Well, that's interesting, because there's no room for Judge Death in this movie or in a sequel to this movie.
You say that, but Alex Garland has gone on record saying that he wanted to make more Judge Dredd movies. Yes,
but the world that we've established does not have aliens or things or death beings from another dimension in it.
No, it doesn't.
It's too grounded.
No, it doesn't. But remember, this is just one day in Dredd's life. Maybe in another part of the megacity these things exist.
I don't think it would work.
Well, we'll never know.
No.
Because we're not getting sequels. Despite wanting to make sequels, his second film, he's gone on record saying like he'd hoped the second film might be about the rise of the megacities and the mega towers and the founding of the judges.
Yeah.
And then by the time they got to a third, he was hoping we'd know enough about the world and about the judge system to introduce Judge Death. Everybody wants Judge Death. Oh, incidentally, I made a mistake last week. Dredd does not punch Judge Death. It's Judge Fear.
Yeah, it was one of the other. You make that mistake.
I own my mistakes here on this podcast. As I said, it was shot in Cape Town, mostly in a film studio. On a studio. So there were sets that they built, those kind of horrible, grimy, slum-like corridors. Mm-hmm. except for a few exteriors, like when they were driving around on the Lawmasters, and of course that shot of the inside of Peachtrees, which was a location somewhere with 3 tall buildings all up against one another. Yep, I've been quite vocal with my trivia all through that episode, so that just about sums it up.
Okay, so we'll do the votes. Well, Blockmania and Apocalypse War for me are peak. As I mentioned last week, these are my favorite Dredd stories.
Yeah.
They're kind of in the middle of the absolute madness of and kookiness of Cursed Earth type stuff versus the dead seriousness of the Democracy stuff, because there's a lot of heavy stuff happens. So yeah, absolutely love these. We'll read them again. They're just amazing. Again, because I've been so indoctrinated by American comics, it's just unlike anything that I
Judge Dredd
was
wasn't
ever
supposed to launch nukes, even to start with. Judge Dredd was supposed to decry the insanity of mutually assured destruction. No, he was just all in.
Yeah.
He launched those nukes.
Yeah.
Then they nuked the peaceful planet.
Yes, that's right.
Then he sends Meg 3's own nukes against their city and kills 500 million people.
Yeah.
What a maniac.
500 million people.
500 million people. Half a billion people, yeah. 500 million, oh my god. Just so crazy. Yeah, it's a yay for me too. I still like Cursed Earth better, I think. But Cursed Earth takes place outside the megacities.
Yes.
Is it? Whereas this one's right in the megacities.
Yeah.
This one's probably my favourite megacity story.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, how do you rate this movie?
It's a yay. Okay. I love this movie. I think it's fantastic. This is the 3rd time I watched it this week, at least. Mm-hmm. I think the action's great. Great action. I love the character of Dredd. It's all there. You know, he does all the Dredd stuff. The ISO cubes. He's passing sentence on them. What's the sentence? 3 weeks ISO cube. So he doesn't make jokes.
Yes,
he's
except
played
for,
straight.
Yeah.
Whereas, of course,
there were kind of some minor one-liners in there, maybe.
Sort of almost like one-liners, like Judgment Time and Wait for Her to Shoot You. Things like that.
Yeah.
But they're not jokes.
No.
It's not like the goofy tone of the 1995 movie. And look, Judge Dredd can be goofy.
Yes.
There's a lot of goofy stuff.
There are one-liners in the Wagner comics, but they're parodies of action movie. Like that comic is parodying those kinds of action movies.
And you've got to go all in. We saw... Okay, I've moved on to adaptation already, I suppose. But we saw last week what happens if you can't make up your mind about what kind of Judge Dredd film you want to make.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, if you're going to do goofy, you've got to go all in.
Yes.
It's got to be... I keep saying Flash Gordon. It's got to be Flash Gordon levels of camp.
Yes.
And absurdity. What Garland calls a surreal magical scale of craziness.
Okay.
They didn't have the budget for that, so they went the other way. They went the democracy way.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Now let me give my vote for the movie.
Oh yeah, sorry.
My vote is a yay, but nowhere near as high a yay as yours is.
Sure.
I probably would not watch this movie again. I think I've absorbed it in one viewing. I will watch The Raid Redemption again several more times.
Yes. Because
there you're seeing human athleticism. It is super violent. It's not a gore fest like this one is. There's something more energetic about that movie.
We did say we'd come back to The Raid, wouldn't it?
This is the reason, is because I think if you watch that, we say that this movie didn't do well because it came out close to The Raid, but it's fair that The Raid is better, and is more exciting because you're seeing the human athleticism of it. Whereas this is like special effects, machine gun kind of stuff, which is fine. But I like this movie. I'm not saying I didn't like this movie. I did like it, but not enough that I would return to it a bunch of times.
Totally fine. I haven't seen The Raid, and maybe that's good for me. It's totally fine. Whichever one you saw first maybe is the one that you're going to...
Yes, that's possibly what we're getting
You're going to love.
Yeah.
I saw this one for... the action's fine, but I really like Judge Dredd.
Sure.
And this is Judge Dredd. He's Dredd.
Dredd is Dredd, but I'm going to give this movie a nay for adaptation.
You maniac.
Because they have gone too far in the opposite direction.
Okay.
They've taken all the fun out of it. They've taken the Ricardo Montalban out of it. They've taken all the satirical elements. They've taken the boing out of it. They've taken all the idiots that don't know how to vote out of it. All that kind of stuff has been sapped out of it. It's like the difference between Batman 66 and The Batman with Robert Pattinson or whatever his
Yes.
name is. It's like that. It's like, here's a super dark movie where everything is super serious. We've explained everything in a rational way, and there's no satire or commentary to be had in there. And meanwhile, Batman 66 is this total kooky, camp, crazy show.
Yeah.
And I feel like we've gone in this 20 years between 95 and 2012 from that weirdo version that Sylvester Stallone made to the most serious, to almost in response to that movie, as opposed to a response to the comic, a response to that and say, let's take out anything that remotely looks like that movie and let's make the armor as realistic as possible. I mean, as stupid as that movie was, that Armani designed outfit kind of looked like a Judge Dredd outfit, right?
It did. Because, I mean, it's spandex, and
Yeah.
Stallone looks good in it.
Yeah.
But, I mean, Garland and the people making this film, they wanted it a bit more grounded. So spandex doesn't stop a
More than a
bullet.
bit more, it's
It
very
doesn't stop
grounded.
a knife.
Yeah.
Urban got into great shape,
Yeah.
but...
For what?
Yeah, he's buried under Kevlar.
Yeah.
He got into great shape, but they did a lot of cardio, apparently. Like,
Right.
they wanted him to have a quote-unquote boxer physique, not not a Stallone-style
Sure.
weightlifter.
Okay.
So more like kind of like the original iteration of the character where he's quite thin,
Yes, right, yeah.
I suppose. But yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I suppose it comes down...
It doesn't, so what I'm saying is it doesn't feel like reading a Judge Dredd comic, which is what it always is for me. What did it feel like?
That is what you like.
What was the tone? What were the themes?
You're always on the side of... How did you put it? You put it really well the other week. I can't remember how. I always like things to be transformed.
Yeah.
Here, we've got a transformation in that we don't have the distraction of a goofy world we have to learn. We can just go all in on the character of Dredd, or the lack thereof. And this is... I love watching him.
I agree. I agree with this version of Dredd is a good version of Dredd.
I think
the
it gets
character of Judge
everything
Dredd.
right about the character and the way he acts and the system in which he operates, the judge system,
Yes.
that which we see of it.
Yeah.
That it gets all of that right. To me, the setting it doesn't matter as much. I mean, they had to do this because of the budget.
Yeah.
And I think,
Yes.
But I think what they've got as a result of that, I said art from adversity before, adversity being the budget and the art, I think this world, it's not the 2000 AD world, but it's still a world that Judge Dredd can operate in, believably.
That is true.
As that character. That's why I'm saying yay, but I think your justification for your nay vote is completely correct as well.
Well, another thing is, I mean, the budget. This is the key thing here, right? This is actually the right adaptation for this budget.
Yes.
It absolutely is the
right.
best adaptation at this budget.
Yes,
but
you're right.
When I read a Judge Dredd comic, even Block Mania involves all these blocks going to war. By the third chapter, there's like 6 blocks of war. Every Judge Dredd story has a scale where he's crossing the city.
Yes.
Sometimes he goes out into sometimes he goes out into space. This
Yes.
is like as
Just
soon
going to
as you hear,
space doesn't
as soon
say
as you
much.
hear in this movie they're going to be in one building, you're like, wait a second, Judge Dredd is, and that's why I love the first 15 minutes when you see the Mega City 1 and he tells you it's got 800 million people and you see the size of it. That's the world of Judge Dredd in the comics.
You're right.
But then it's like, because of this budget, we've had to zoom down into this one. So it's not really the fault of the writing or direction. It's the fault of the amount of money.
And another point, it's not like the people making this film thought this was a dumb comic and it needed to be... And it needed to be...
This is so respectful.
Yeah. It's not like, oh, we need to get rid of this goofy shit and we're just going to have it be...
Exactly. It's not like
dark and gritty because people love darkness and grittiness. No, he would have been... I get the impression that, well, his first draft had Judge Death in it. I get the impression that Garland would have been very happy to have robots and aliens.
Yes.
And all that stuff.
And I think if you had more than one tower, you could start calling them Estelle Getty Towers and Henry Kissinger Towers, and it would kind of make more sense. But to have just one tower, you can't do that, right? Because you're not hitting that parodic note. It's the same problem 95 had. You can't make that joke once. It's got to be like the whole...
Yeah.
You've got to be in that world.
I really like the way the film handled the nods to kind of like the 2000 AD content, with just having those blink and you miss it.
But I actually wonder why
fans.
bother with them in the first...
Because they're Easter eggs. I feel like they're not... I would call them Easter eggs, not, hey... they're not universe establishing moments.
Right.
They're just there for the fans, really. I'll finish up. I think that was a very productive discussion. I'll finish up with a quote from Garland and Wagner, which I read in an interview with both of them, which came out in 2012 at the time. If I was going to draw this is Garland. If I was going to draw a distinction between the first film and the second film, it would primarily be a point of character. In the first conversation John and I had, one of the things I was trying to explain to him was that we wouldn't have the budget on the first outing anyway to portray some of the aspects of Megacity 1 and all the robots and aliens and that kind of full-on surreal magical scale. But what we could do was commit ourselves completely to the character. That was our starting point. And then Wagner said, I think that's the most pleasing thing about it. That was what bothered me so much about the first film. The story had nothing to do with Judge Dredd. Judge Dredd wasn't really Judge Dredd. Here, they've remained really true to the character this time, which is great.
Yep, agreed. Completely agreed. Okay, please like, rate, review, subscribe on whatever your platform is. Please join us on Facebook or Instagram or Blue Sky if you want to send us a DM or a comment. All those links are in the show notes. You can also send us an email at the email address which is in the show notes. And you can please join our Patreon at patreon.com/comicbookmovieoblivion. Because we need that money to buy books like the ones we had to buy physical copies of.
Oh, yes.
For what we're doing for the next 2 weeks. We might have a skip week.
We're going to have a break for the holidays. Today we're recording on Christmas Eve. Yeah. Happy Christmas, everybody.
Yes.
We're also recording in the morning, so you might have noticed a lack of the telltale can opening.
Can openings. We're more lucid, maybe.
That's debatable.
Yeah, so we're going to be doing The Adventures of Barry Mackenzie.
Yes, indeed.
Now,
for Australia Day.
Yeah, for Australia Day, double. We've got 2 of these movies. So the first one I think is 1972.
The Adventures of Barry Mackenzie.
Adventures of Barry Mackenzie. You might be able to find this movie on YouTube or Archive if they're back up on Archive. I'm not sure. I can't remember where I found my copy. The books, you have to buy physical books that went out of print in 1980.
Amazing.
But if you want to just see what the strip looks like, you can just kind of Google it, and you'll find a few, but you won't find a full, So the strip... You won't find the full books online.
We'll talk more about it next week, but they're actually by Barry Humphries, and they appeared in Private Eye.
Yes.
The famous kind of gossip.
Yes. Oh, yeah, so if you can, download Private Eye from that period off of some online archive, you might be able to find the strips that way as well if you're super keen.
So we'll do The Adventures of Barry Mackenzie, and then a week later we'll do Barry Mackenzie Holds His Own.
Yes, with maybe a week in between. I can't remember. Or there's somewhere there's going to be a break. Yeah, I think that covers it. There you go. All right.
I can't be in love if it's plastic. So let